Hello, I'm Renan Barkana, a professor of astrophysics. Our culture is overwhelmed by bad ideas. These bad ideas are tearing down Western societies, and we have to fight back. A deeply flawed belief that underlies many others is the denial of free will. If there's no free will, no choice, then people are not responsible for their actions. This implies that success should not be rewarded because it is undeserved. Indeed, this gives people an easy way to justify the destructive impulse of jealousy at success. Denying free will also makes people excuse and tolerate bad behavior, ranging from laziness to crime and all the way to Hamas. More personally, it teaches people to feel that they are helpless victims who should spend their time blaming others for every difficulty. On the other hand, affirming free will means that people are responsible for their actions. Regardless of circumstances, each person is a rational being who can consider various courses of action and decide between right and wrong. We each have an unlimited potential to contribute to the world. This idea empowers people to take charge and improve their lives. Now, there are many different versions of the ongoing assault on free will. In biology, people argue about the relative influence on our lives of nature versus nurture, of our genes compared to our environment. But a third crucial variable is often forgotten: free will, volition, the actions we choose to take that make our lives either better or worse. Here I will focus on the unfortunate contribution of physics to the denial of free will. The presentation will be non-technical but fairly detailed. If there is no free will, then people are basically seen as simple robots. The physics version of this is that the atomic world is deterministic, there are only atoms moving under precise laws of physics, and thus there is no free will. Before continuing, I'll briefly comment on quantum mechanics. The atomic world is quantum mechanical, and this introduces various phenomena, but in the macroscopic world that our senses perceive, strange quantum phenomena cannot be detected, and there's no evidence that what is called quantum fuzziness has any significant effect on the function of the human brain. There's an interesting issue of the inherent randomness in some quantum phenomena, but even if this were to have some effect, it is firmly established to be a fundamental inherent randomness. Complete randomness is not in any way related to what people think of as free will. And in any case, this quantum randomness also is washed out in the macroscopic world that we inhabit. That's why we don't see objects suddenly appear or disappear around us. So let's set that aside and operate within the framework of classical Newtonian physics. In this view, a human being is a collection of atoms interacting according to physical forces. Let me first explain in some detail what is meant by determinism. In principle, if you could know the precise properties of all the atoms that make up a person, for example me, and also all the surrounding atoms that I interact with, and you had an infinitely powerful computer, then from the laws of physics you could predict my behavior precisely. Technically, this concept is called Maxwell's demon. Now that's all true, but is it relevant? In real life, neither I nor you know or could know anything anywhere near that. Our perception consists of very limited knowledge and only on the scale of humans. Our senses cannot perceive atoms, molecules, or cells. When we consider brain activity, it's also well established that we are only aware of a very limited portion of what goes on in our brains. What I am arguing is that at the level of a human being, we do have free will. There's no such thing as free will at the atomic level, but there's also no such thing as a human being at the atomic level. A major concept that people don't properly appreciate is the hierarchy of levels. You can look at the world at different levels: galaxies in astronomy, planets, economics of human societies, psychology, biology, chemistry, and all the way down to physics. They are interrelated, but each level of description has its own validity. One level doesn't invalidate another. Fundamental properties at one level can be very different from those on another without inserting anything supernatural. The basic reason that there can be so many different levels is the huge range of scales. It took centuries for science to even establish the existence of atoms, since our senses are nowhere near having the ability to detect them. The size of an atom compared to an apple is similar to the size of the apple compared to the entire Earth. I want to illustrate the hierarchy of levels with the clearest example we have in physics, and that is thermodynamics, basically the study of gases. Within this subject came the first real understanding of how the macroscopic world arises from the microscopic one, and how the two can seemingly have fundamentally different properties. Let me give credit here. This understanding is mostly associated with Ludwig Boltzmann, who discovered it towards the end of the 19th century. Let's start with temperature. An atom doesn't have a temperature. The temperature is a macroscopic average measure of a large collection of atoms. Namely, it measures the average random speed of atoms as they move around and bump into each other. If you are looking at the world at our level of experience, then you really care about the temperature of the air and of various objects. But if you are looking at the microscopic level of individual atoms, each atom just has a speed, and there's no such thing as temperature. Does this discovery mean that you should no longer, quote, believe in temperature and you should feel free to touch a hot oven? No, that would obviously be absurd. The atomic view does not invalidate the human level experience, it just provides an understanding of it. This leads to something even more interesting. It turns out that the most basic feature of our world, the different behavior of the future and the past, can also be explained. I'm referring to the fact that if you watch a video backwards in time, it looks ridiculous, you can immediately tell that it's backwards. This is actually much more subtle than it might seem. Suppose the video is of a ball dropping to the floor and bouncing back up. If it's a single bounce, the video would look pretty similar if shown backwards. That's because gravity does not specify the direction of time, or what is usually referred to as the arrow of time. But if you're shown a few bounces or more, you can easily see that each bounce gets shorter if time is moving forwards. That's because what happens during a bounce is not just gravity. To make this much more obvious, let's switch to a better example, a falling egg. It doesn't bounce, obviously it shatters on the floor. Shown backwards, this movie would look absurd, with the egg fragments coming together to make a whole egg. The arrow of time comes from our limited macroscopic view of the world, in which we have the concept of an egg and don't just follow individual atoms. As an analogy, think of a puzzle of 1,000 pieces, say of a tiger. You place the completed puzzle in its box, but disconnect the pieces, just leaving them in the right positions. You can clearly see the tiger. Now you close the box and give it a few shuffles. You open the box and have just a random collection of puzzle pieces. However, if you were to show this movie backwards, it would look as if you took a random jumble of the pieces, gave it a few shakes, and when you opened the box, the puzzle was a completed tiger. Why is it obvious that this can never happen? Well, it's again a matter of different levels of awareness. At the level of an individual puzzle piece, each shuffle is the same as any other. The piece is just in some location. But at the level of the whole puzzle, there is a special order corresponding to the tiger. There's only one special order, while the number of random orders is huge, almost infinite. So just by chance, you will never get the right order. It's the same with a smashed egg, except that the egg is a puzzle made up of a tremendously large number of atoms. So a complete egg is an even more special and unlikely pattern if you give it a random shake, in this case by smashing it on the floor. The fact that atoms at the microscopic level don't look so different forwards or backwards in time doesn't change the fact that at the human level of experience, the direction of time is obvious. This discovery doesn't mean that now we get to ignore the future. That would obviously be absurd. To further illuminate the concept, let's also look at some biological examples of the hierarchy of levels. Consider a colony of ants or bees. The colony as a whole is a remarkable conglomerate. It can construct a big home, an array of tunnels for the ants, or an intricate beehive. There is a division of labor among tasks such as food gathering and nurturing of the young. There is collective protection of the nest so that any intruder is subject to an overwhelming attack. Now, no one would argue that an individual ant or bee has the intelligence or understanding to construct an ant colony or a beehive. Each individual in the colony is a very simple creature, but collectively they are effectively a very complex and powerful entity. For example, you can find videos of ants creating a massive bridge out of their own bodies. The level of the ant colony shows a sophistication that no one would suspect based on observing an individual ant. It's a similar idea with consciousness and free will. These are patterns or properties within a human brain that interacts with itself and the environment and is organized hierarchically with very limited knowledge present at the top of the hierarchy. Free will doesn't exist at the atomic level in the microscopic laws of physics, but we do effectively have free will as human beings. In fact, that is the most basic part of what it means to be human. The free will denial narrative is a fundamental denial of our humanity. If you have been convinced by it, I hope you will reconsider.